panel for being here. I come from the private sector, and our whole model is based on some assumptions, and a lot of it on predictions and projections on historical data. But when it comes to personnel, one of the things that we've always tried to do is to hire the best people we could, and then make sure that we put programs in place that set benchmarks for them to achieve. Because I don't know if there's any other way to say, is this working or not working, and are these the best people to have in these jobs? So having said that, I often wonder, because I look at what's going on, and I think the chairman was very articulate about this. This isn't so much about who's making what and trying to make them look bad. This is about, are we getting the best return on the investment for hardworking American taxpayers? So it shouldn't be an us versus you, or are you worried about us coming knocking at your door and trying to upend your economic model? But in my life, everything has been about sustainability. Can you continue on the path that you're on and think that somehow it bodes well going into the future? So, Mr. McCord, having a little bit of idea of what I do for a living, whenever we're hiring these folks, the boards are bringing people in, what are the measures? I mean, how do we look at these folks that are in these upper positions and say, these are the metrics we expect you to perform to? There's a great incentive for doing that, and it's called compensation. But how do we measure it, and what do we look at? Do we look at student graduation rates? What do we look at?
Well, it's interesting you would ask that question today, because our Board of Trustee meetings are tomorrow and the next day, and I happen to have in front of me the financial models and benchmarks that it happens to be on our agenda, 8 o'clock Friday morning. We are very benchmark driven. Our trustees are very high achieving businessmen. We have the CFO, Eli Lilly, for instance, is on our board right now. And when we benchmark, one of the things we are very conscious about is we're not benchmarking against higher education on the business side of the institution. They want to see benchmarks against corporate gold standards. So we'll go out and have benchmarking analyses done on our business operations and compare them to that. But we also set very stringent benchmarks. In fact, none of these are on industry averages. They're all at a higher level than an industry average. We also have just approved a bicentennial strategic plan, and every item in that strategic plan will have associated benchmarks. And I think you're going to see that across the industry. The industry has shifted, and people that are being hired in are corporate on the business side are corporate.
And just to interrupt for a minute, so is the benchmark based on the success of graduation rate? Is it?
Oh, we have many, but we do have completion, graduation, all kinds of benchmarks, but there are many based on student success, and we've fared extremely well on those.
Mr. Galley, with what Mrs. McCord has just said, is that something that makes sense to you and you agree with?
That's consistent with some of what I've seen, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, I think the big question is, Mr. Vetter, I'm going to come to you also. And I think this is where we're really trying to come to, the best return on the investment. Because we all know the way out of poverty is education. But education for something that actually gets you to where you need to go, and not just a degree that's accompanied with a lot of debt, but actually a destination that you can reach that's going to lift you out of it. So your take on all this, because I know it's a highly competitive field when you're looking at people to come in and run this business. Now, forget about being a university. But as a business, because you're competing for the same talent that everybody else is competing for to come to something that's a real sound economical model. So how does that figure in, and how do you think that weighs when it comes to, how do we recruit the best of the best? Certainly compensation has to have something to do with it. That's, Mr. Vetter, that's for you. Is there a different way to go about it?
To get better people in higher ed? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, my question is, so what's the incentive to get them in?
Yeah, well, you mentioned two good words, Congressman. One was incentives, and another was, by inference, information. How do you measure what's good in higher ed? How do you know what's good? Did Harvard have a good year last year? Who the heck would know? How would you know? Do the seniors know more than the freshmen? We don't know that. What happens to kids 5 years after graduation? We're starting to get that information. Finally, the Department of Education is finally grudgingly publishing data on that. What's the rate of return on faculty research? If you write an article for the Journal of Last Resort that 3 people read and get a lower teaching load to do that, is that serving the the broader issue in interest of society. And by the way, I've been ripping off taxpayers for 51 years. I'm my 51st year of teaching.
You have the right to remain silent.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I drink to that. But I think and I'm being a little facetious here, I think it's a noble profession. I think what we're doing is important before Mr. Hartle has a heart attack. But we don't really know a lot. We're in the information business, and we don't even know basic things. Students study 30 hours a week or less. That's what the Department of Labor tells us. 30 weeks a year, that's 900 hours a year. Their parents work twice as many hours. 8th graders study 40% more than 13th graders. Now, does that make any sense at all? Why aren't we doing anything about it? We're not measuring all this. I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, the only thing was just the benchmarks that we use to hire the really good people, because you're in a very competitive environment. And if you're going to get the best of the best, it's not just what's in their heart and their passion for what they're doing. It's also dollars have a little bit of influence too. So I want to make sure we keep it in perspective, because the return on taxpayer investment is what we're concerned about, and that it's fair. Thank you.
Mr. Lewis.